recently, like in the last year, new information's come out about the amount of leaking out of natural gas systems and the leak of methane. And methane's has 200 times greater impact on global warming, on greenhouse effect, than carbon dioxide. So it's kind of like it's this CO2 equivalent kind of a thing. So it gets into this squishy space, but it's estimated to be about 20 tons. And then the if you're going to do an in-ground heat pump, that's still about 8 or 9 tons. Whereas a rocket mass heater is going to be something in the order of 0.4 tons. So there's a bizarre thing with wood. If you're going to use dry wood to heat your home, such as with a conventional wood stove or anything like that, the amount of carbon footprint is about equivalent to the tons of wood. There's a lot of math to it, but the weird thing is that a ton of wood works out to be about a ton of carbon dioxide. All right, all my stuff, and let's move on. Rocket mass heater. Heat your home with about 1/10 of the wood, and it says here no smoke. That should be changed. There's a little smoke when you start it. Has anybody here actually seen, besides Stephen, seen a rocket mass heater in use? Yes, sir.
I just lived in Europe and I've seen them there. Germany.
The rocket mass heaters or the Kachelhafens?
Big masonry heaters, little firebox, heat the mass and keep it going.
Masonry heater. A rocket mass heater heats with half the wood of a masonry heater. And so a masonry heater is this giant Goliath bunch of masonry with this interesting path for the smoke to pass through, and then it goes outside. And then it's still much smokier than a rocket mass heater. Rocket mass heaters are stealing a lot of ideas. These things, the masonry heaters, which are so massive, and they're beautiful, generally take 3 months for a professional build and cost a minimum of $10,000 to $15,000 just for the materials. And so to have a pro build it, you're probably going to be spending somewhere on the order of $30,000, $35,000. And you probably don't want an amateur to build it. Whereas rocket mass heater is designed for amateurs to build, and the materials cost will be somewhere in the order of $200 to $400. While they can be built in a weekend, and I've seen them built in as little as a day, I would say that most people probably build them in about a week. So, okay, I want to do a thing. And I've got 3 little videos that are in this. These are 3 videos that I've made. This first one is using a technique called shitty animation. I made this myself. And then the next one is made by a guy who knows what he's doing. But I needed to get this out. But this explains in roughly what is, and I can't do it better than this, I think. So I'm going to try and see if I can do this. No. I might need some help. Okay, so I kind of did this. You wiggle, 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 and then, it's doing it.
A conventional wood stove is a metal box with a chimney. The fire goes in the box and the heat is extracted immediately. The temperature of the fire is usually about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The smoke goes up the chimney due to a thermosiphon. Over time, people learned that creosote would build up in the chimney and cause chimney fires, which could burn down the whole house. The solution was to insulate the chimney, holding a lot of heat in the chimney. When you have a hot fire in the stove, it would often get hot enough in the chimney to burn out the creosote, thus keeping the house safe. The downside is that a lot of heat ends up going out the chimney. So, if you want to keep the heat in your house, you have to burn the creosote earlier. Instead of insulating the chimney, let's insulate the firebox. This pushes the fire temperatures to over 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, which will not only combust all the creosote, but all the smoke too. Now our exhaust is typically just steam and CO2. Since there's no danger of a creosote fire, we can extract a lot more heat before the exhaust goes outside. Over the years, we optimized the design. We found we didn't need nearly as much wood, so the burning area became much smaller. We added a stubby chimney inside the system to create a thermosiphon so we could push the heat wherever we wanted. We used a large mass to extract a lot of the heat. A large enough mass would slowly release heat for several days. We came up with a lot of different ideas for pretty. And today, most installations will heat a home with 1/10 the wood, produce 1/100th of the smoke, and people wake up in the morning to a warm house. Safer, cheaper, easier, and more luxuriant. If you like this sort of thing,
All right, I'm going to try and do it again with this one. Ah, worked. Yes. A rocket mass heater claims to heat a home with 1/10 the wood of a conventional wood stove. How is that possible? Let's start by looking at the label on a conventional wood stove. This label is allowed to have 16 extra percentage points to compensate for some of the heat that goes up the chimney. So a wood stove that says it is 75% efficient is actually 59% efficient. Different testing facilities compete to measure the efficiency of a wood stove, so they work hard to produce numbers better than their competitors. Legitimately, they might use especially dry wood, or there could be a little extra air pressure in a test lab, things that could plausibly happen in an optimal home scenario. So the resulting numbers are higher than if their competitor had done the same test, and yet still fall within a space of being legit. But this means that most people using a 59% efficient wood stove will probably operate it at 20% efficiency on average. And most people putting a big green log on just before bed with dampers set low might be getting less than 3% efficiency. And when the fire is down to just embers, the stove might continue to pull heat out of the house, resulting in negative efficiency. It's pretty easy for a rocket mass heater to compete with 3% efficiency, and even easier to compete with negative efficiency. When using a conventional wood stove properly, the law requires an exit temperature of at least 350 degrees. 350 to 600 degrees is the most common. No matter how efficient the burn is, that's a lot of heat going outside. Rocket mass heaters typically test at 93% efficiency. That is without adding the 16% for going up the chimney. And the exhaust temperature tends to be 70 to 140 degrees. Since the mass holds the heat through the night after an efficient burn, people are not attempting to set up an inefficient burn through the night. Most people shifting from conventional wood stoves to rocket mass heaters report heating their homes with 1/10 the wood. Some people have shifted from modern super efficient wood stoves that they were using very wisely, and those people report heating with 75% to 80% less wood. Heat your home with 1/10 the wood, 1/100th the smoke, and wake up to a warm home. Safer, cheaper, cleaner, easier, and more luxuriant than a conventional wood stove. Safer, cheaper, cleaner, and better for the environment than natural gas or electric heat. How many people have used a conventional wood stove for a winter? Like that was your primary form of heat? Okay, few people. How many cords of wood would you burn in a winter?
3 to 4.
3 to 4? 2? Anybody else remember? 4 or 5? So when you burn 4 or 5 cords in that winter, did you have secondary heat? No, it was purely just that. How cold was it in the building?
Cold.
So it wasn't comfortable, and so several cords of wood wasn't very comfortable. And then did you do anything about burning fire at night, or did you just like get up and it was extra cold? Okay. Who drew the short straw? Okay, anybody over here burn with wood? 2 or 3 cords.
We'll get back up the electric baseboard that we kept at, like, 45 or 50, so we never got too cold.
Okay, so it might come on some nights. Okay, all right. So I have a Missoula home, 3-bedroom home, and it was several winters ago. It was a particularly cold winter, and we carefully measured exactly how much wood. 0.60 cords of wood with our rocket mass heater. And this is in a home that doesn't have any winter curtains at all. It does not have a front porch, an enclosed front porch. It's a very exposed home. It's not particularly well insulated. It's okay insulated. So, and it's a double wide. So, you know, there's cold coming from the floor. The floor is literally cold when you're barefoot. And we heated that home, and we carefully measured the temperature in the house. It was an average of 69 degrees. So much warmer than what you were talking about. So any questions about how they generally work? You kind of, my 2 little videos there kind of gave you a rough idea of how they work. Basically the idea is that we, rather than having the fire simply burn in a metal box at about 1,000 degrees, we burn a fire in an insulated space. And then we see temperatures of roughly pushing 1,800 degrees. Some of our systems, we believe, are pushing 2,000 degrees. And so because that's so hot right at the beginning, it burns all the creosote and all the smoke. And so it's a very, very clean burn. So Stephen, you've seen us running lots of rocket mass heaters over at our place. And you can, and I know there have been many times that I go down to the shop to see what everybody's up to, and I see nothing coming out of the chimney, nothing at all. So I'm thinking like, nobody's there, it's empty. And I get there, and everybody's there, the fire's blazing, it's running perfectly clear. Now, sometimes it runs clear, sometimes you can see the white steam coming out of it, and there's no smell. So this is one of the criteria we have for, if we ever build something and it doesn't do that, we take it out.
Have you installed that since our air quality laws have reduced the number of wood stoves, or are we grandfathered?
So the question is politics. How have you dodged the politics? How has the Department of Making You Sad not come to your house and slapped you about a bit?
Well, you can't necessarily dismiss that as
No, I'm not going.
It's a legitimate air quality issue.
And I think one of the things I want to talk about today is that I've invited several lawmakers to come to this presentation, and I gave the same presentation at my place a couple of weeks ago, and I invited lawmakers to come to that. And it's kind of like, there may be laws saying if you burn wood, that's naughty. And it's kind of like, in fact, I gave this exact same presentation at the old Missoula Public Library about 11 years ago, and 2 hours before the presentation started, my phone rang, and it was county air. And they were giving me a cease and desist. I was not allowed to present at the library. I was not allowed to show you these slides. And after visiting with the guy on the phone for a little bit, came to the conclusion he thought I was going to fire one up inside the library. And I said, no, it's just slides. That's all it is slides. So we had a long chat about what is and is not okay. But part of the reason why I want to infect brains with the presentation today is because of the political nature. In fact, I want to say a thing that's not in any of the slides. I want everybody to look at this, get an understanding of what a rocket mass heater is, and I want nobody to build one as long as the government says it's not okay. Exactly the same thing that people did with pot. Nobody touched pot until the government said it was okay. It doesn't matter that it saves the world. It doesn't matter that it solves a long list of global problems. It doesn't matter that it can save you thousands of dollars per year and make your life far more luxuriant. Those things don't matter. What matters is that you do what the government says. Now, I happen to know that there are some people knowingly, willingly using these things in places, I won't say which county, where the government would wag their finger in a vigorous fashion. And so, but they're doing it. They have made a choice. And I have hours more to say down this road, but no, your question is a good question.
What's your answer?
And I am evading the answer for some reason. Okay. Now, to continue along the lines of like, because the politicians, who was alive in the era of Missoula when people heated their homes with conventional wood stoves and the Missoula air was just choked with smoke? I mean, it was awful. The reasons for those laws are good reasons. Now, today, you're going to heat your home with natural gas or electric. There are some other alternatives, but let's just say natural gas or electric. So there's an environmental dumpster fire going on somewhere else. At least with this, it's right here. You're owning your own shit. It's all right here. And it's very clean. And you can know how you're doing. You can see it. And you know exactly what your environmental impact is, which is slight at best. Fair? If 80% of Missoula heated with a rocket mass heater, how smoky would the air be? You probably wouldn't even be able to tell past the smell of car exhaust in the city. Is that fair? Now I've got to, here is me 11 or 12 years ago at Caras Park. See, this picture, this is me. So at Caras Park, the Earth Day. It's the Missoula Urban Demonstration Project. And this is the only demonstration of the day. And so we took all the parts for a rocket mass heater and put them on trailers that were pulled by bicycles. And we moved this over to Caras Park. And we built this in an hour and 10 minutes. And then we fired it up as a demonstration inside of Missoula County, which is perfectly legal, provided that you have a bag of marshmallows nearby. Although you're not allowed to have a burn for longer than 2 hours, unless you switch to hot dogs, then it's okay. All right, but so it's perfect, what we do here, perfectly legal, according to Missoula Air Quality. All right, here we go. And we wiggle and tap, and it works.
This video is about rocket mass heater exhaust. Later, I'll upload a video about how a bunch of bicycles moved the fixins for a rocket mass heater to Caras Park for the Earth Day festivities. And then we built the whole thing in a little over an hour. Now this is a prototype featuring a lot of rocket mass heater design variations that have not been tried before. You kind of see the fire in there, all that flammage, and then here's our exhaust. And it's got like nothing coming out.
I'm afraid to tap that and make it go away.
And then we got the fire. Right, fire, and then we got the exhaust.
Important to note that this is the end of Guido.
How warm does it feel?
It's pretty warm.
It is activated. So you can kind of see down in there. See the fire? There's fire, lots of fire down there. Here's our exhaust. Okay, okay.
No smoke.
Okay, so you're kind of taking us, you can kind of smell it there? Do you smell anything?
No, I smell smoke. Smell, but not, there's,
It's like not,
Yeah.
but yeah, you're obviously not getting smoked
Right.
out there.
Right.
How many people would stick their face into the smoke coming out of a conventional wood stove? If you like this sort of thing, come on out to the forums at Permies.com. talk about.
Pretty clean? I mean, you saw the exhaust on that. And I think that the exhaust on that is much cleaner than the wood stoves of like, what, 30, 40 years ago that were polluting the Missoula airspace, right? So I do believe that there's room for improvement in these rocket mass heaters. They are amazing and stunning. I mean, if nothing else, the fact that they heat a home with 1/10 of the wood would mean 1/10 of the smoke. But actually, because we use the smoke and the creosote as fuel, it's actually closer to 1/100th or 1/1000th of the smoke. So I don't know if it's for everybody, you know, and I think that there's lots more testing to be done. There's probably a few thousand white papers that need to be written. Yes, ma'am.
So it's a small box, combustion box, but then you have a lot of concrete or stone around it to absorb that extra high heat in the box that then is going to radiate it out to the house later?
I would say that I have never seen one with concrete, but I have seen a lot of them made with cob, also known as adobe. And so basically mud. And then when you combine the mud just right, you end up with something that turns very hard, and it is rather cement-like. But yes, that's exactly it, because we want to solve the problem of like people with conventional wood stoves, they want to be warm through the night. They want to wake up and it's like 69. They don't want to wake up and it's 42. And then that's when everybody's holding onto the blankets and they're like, it's your turn to start the fire. And so instead, Stephen, when we wake up in the morning,
I have never seen it less than like 62 degrees in the morning when we wake up.
and if it's 62 in the morning, that's probably because here in January, nobody made a fire yesterday. And the last fire was the day before yesterday. The mass that you talk about got heated up on the last fire 2 days ago and has been gently putting out heat for the last 2 days, so much so that we've been lazy and we haven't built a fire since 2 days ago. Other people, of all the people that heated with wood, how many of you did the 24 hours a day thing? Like you just kept the fire going 24 hours a day. I would say most people who heat with wood on a conventional wood stove, they keep that thing stoked 24 hours a day. They just keep pouring wood in and pouring wood in. Whereas we'll burn it for an hour, hour and a half, and then cork it and walk away for a day or two. Usually I would say that if we built one in the morning, it's usually 24 hours plus 12 hours. In the evening the next day, we'll do a fire. And we don't really need to. It'll be like 68 or so. I was like, you know what would be nice? Let's just build a fire. And so, pretty comfortable. Yes, sir.
How do you keep it from getting too cold? I mean, how does it prevent the constant heat? I missed this.
Well, the most common design, now there are many designs, but the most common design is where you've got something that is barrel shaped, and they come in all kinds of different weird sizes, but we call that the radiator. And so what happens is it's like, oh, it's 66 in here, let's build a fire. And so you build the fire, and then the amount of heat that comes off of this barrel is incredible. And then within an hour, then it's like, all right, it's 76 in here now, it's plenty warm, let's cork the fire. Does this answer your question? So the fire will be done, there'll be embers, and then we'll like take the 2 bricks and go boom, and then it's corked. And then in order to start the fire again, you have to move the bricks in order to put the fire in there. So does this answer your question?
Yeah.
So there's short-term heat coming off the radiator, and then that's usually about 70% of the heat is short-term heat. Let's heat the space up right away, and then the rest of it goes into the mass, and then this little trickle goes out the roof. All right, heat your home with 1/10 the wood, the heat from the fire can last for days, construction, materials cost. Even if you were to buy the firewood, it costs less to operate than natural gas. And I believe that in Missoula, natural gas, if you're going to choose between electric and natural gas or any of the other options, I think most people choose natural gas. It's considered to be the cheapest. Do you know is natural gas in Missoula subsidized in any way? No, okay. Some places it is. Can also heat with fallen branches, junk mail. There's a guy who once heated his home with a rocket mass heater and nothing but junk mail. It can be done. Wood shop scraps count too. At first I was skeptical. I remember I was very fortunate. The very first time I ever saw a rocket mass heater, I did not believe it, but my curiosity was piqued, and so I went to go see one in action, and I attended a workshop. But the workshop was also doubling as like a gathering of all of the rocket mass heater experts across the world to talk about it. So I happened to be there with 5 experts. And then as I was learning about them and kind of going, well, this is rather profound, why don't more people know about this? I mean, whenever anybody's here, we point it out. That was it. There was nothing on the internet about them other than an advertisement for this workshop I was at. So it's like there was no videos, no pictures, nothing. And so we're trying to, let people know. Now I host not that annual event, but that periodic event. I think about every other year, including this year we're going to do one, the Rocket Mass Heater Jamboree at our place. We've hosted a few, which is why we have so many rocket mass heaters I'll be showing you here in a moment. But at first I was very skeptical. I could not believe that there could be a sideways burn. That made no sense to me. No smoke, that made no sense. Because I heated my home several years with just a wood stove, with a very nice and fancy wood stove. And I knew my wood stove was 75% efficient, so how is it that it could heat with 1/10 of the wood? Wouldn't that be claiming to be 750% efficient? And so, anyway, now it works. The sideways burn, very hot, complete combustion. We are domesticating the chimney fire. The number one reason why wood stoves are banned or why insurance companies hate them or fire marshals rally against them. Fire marshals. Fire marshals are sick of pulling dead babies out of homes that got a chimney fire. And so, is there anybody here who does not know what a chimney fire is? Okay, so good. We're all good with what a chimney fire is. Cool, clean exhaust, keep the heat inside. All right, embrace your skepticism. Out at my place, and I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure this list is fairly accurate. We have the rock solid designs. Anything that works poorly or whatever, because we do a lot of experimentation. So there are experiments that do not work, and we take those out. But we give them a try, and we try to find a way to get them to work. But when we have the innovators events, when we have the experts from all around the globe, Australia, from the Netherlands, Israel, anyway, all over the world, come to our place and build these things. They oftentimes have ideas of new things to try. And so we give it a shot. We give it a try. And we've got a lot of things that have worked out really, really well, and we have some things that we have removed. And we'll kind of do a little quick tour of those. Let's see, 13 active rocket mass heaters, and 6 that are retired, and 8 other rocket contraptions. So this is probably the star of the show. This is the Pebble-style rocket mass heater that's inside the Fisher-Price house. This is the one I was talking about earlier, 0.60 cords of wood in one winter. So basically, it's just a wooden box, and we've got these granite slabs on the top, and then the ducting goes from the rocket mass heater over there. And that's a stainless steel barrel. The ducting goes over, back, and then up and out. And there's a bunch of pea gravel. and big rocks on top of that. And that's all it is, a very, very simple design. It has probably the most expensive core you can have. And so part of this design was sky's the limit. So basically we've got about, I think about a little over $2,000 wrapped up in this rocket mass heater. And a good fancy pants wood stove right now is about $5,000, I believe. Is that right? Does anybody know? Has anybody shopped for wood stoves recently? Okay. But this has got a molded ceramic fiber core, about $700. And so this is a material that is designed to tolerate 2,700 degrees. It's really kind of difficult to acquire. We've got this tube as part of it, and then there's this piece that comes out of it that's the burn tunnel and the wood feed. And it is a kind of a trough shape turned upside down. It's referred to as a puppy burner. It's used in pet crematoriums.
Sorry.
It's 8 years old. I think we are currently in its 9th winter of use. And when we pop the barrel off in order to clean out the inside, to clean out the ash, the ceramic fiber riser, this thing right here, looks like it's still brand new. This thing will probably go 40, 50, 60 years is my guess. I don't know, maybe longer.
Paul, is there a tube going out into that ridge to bring heat out into the...
So here's the wood feed. The sticks go in vertically, and there is a tube or a burn tunnel that the fire goes in, and then the riser is inside of this barrel. Then the exhaust comes down the sides of the barrels and gives off a bunch of heat. It's collected in a manifold. There's a duct down there, a tube, which then is low in inside the box, and it comes down this way, and then it hangs a hard left and goes back there. Then it goes up and comes back to here. Does that answer your question? Okay.
What's that material? What's the duct?
The duct is made out of duct or ducts.
Metal or like white food liners? What do you...
Metal. We're using, usually we use stovepipe for the first 6 to 8 feet. And then we switch over to the galvanized duct. I don't want to expose anything galvanized to temperatures that could be 400 degrees. Usually by the time you leave the manifold, temperatures are about 300 to 350. So I want to use stovepipe for the first, I don't know, 5, 6 feet or so. Now, anyway, does that answers your question? I mean, there's a great book out there called The Rocket Mass Heater Builder's Guide that goes into great detail about a lot of these materials. Chris McClellan and I put out a little ebook a couple of months ago that's called something about riser design. And I think it does a good job of covering all of the different materials that can be used for the riser, for the part that's inside here that needs to, be very insulated yet tolerate extremely high temperatures. And one of the reasons why we decided to write that book, and it's like 45 pages or something like that, is like I remember getting invited to an event here in Missoula where somebody was building a rocket mass heater here in the city of Missoula. And they asked me to stop by and have a look. And I told them, you guys have got to stop. And they had a workshop. They had like a dozen people there going to help build a rocket mass heater. And I said, you need to send all these people home. Your design is like the worst design I've ever seen in my life. You can't do this. It won't work. It won't work. It'll be a mess. So there's lots of people who they don't have this material. And so then they go to something else and they're like, oh, I'll just use this. And it's like, that won't work. That'll be a disaster. And so the high temp thing is tough. Some people want to use steel. Steel will spall at 1,600 degrees, but we're pushing for 2,000. And so it's like steel will not last inside of a core. And there are some that do have steel. We have one at our place that has steel, but it's a 4-inch system, And it is designed, we'll see a picture of it here in a little bit, but it's designed very particularly to be able to cool itself and try and hit that sweet spot. But I'm not sure we're going to keep it much longer. We might keep it another couple of years. We've got a couple more ideas on how to get it to last.
So just briefly, I'm not clear on the ceramic core. What do you use those for? For the ducting?
We use it for a riser, but I think it's used in steel making and steel pouring.
So where do the risers go?
Oh, well, okay. In this image, it's going to be inside of here. The riser,
I got you.
yeah. So there's the wood feed, and there's a burn tunnel, and then there's a riser that goes up inside of it. And so this is like a stubby little chimney. This is where we domesticate the chimney fire. We're going to try to get it to push 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, burning all the smoke and burning all the creosote. All right? So now the thing is that when it comes to the riser, the thing we saw earlier, that was $700, which for a lot of people, that's crazy expensive. So we have worked hard to come up with risers that are more in the $100 range. And so we've got a buffet of designs that will work magnificently. Does this answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
So how hot is that barrel with the riser?
Well, right now it looks like it's very cold. Okay. So the riser's in the middle, and the barrel is here, right? And so then you've got this pushing 2,000 degree stuff hitting the barrel, but it's throwing off that heat so incredibly fast that when you put one of those point and squirt thermometers at it to say how hot is that, then we're seeing temperatures usually in the 900 to 1,100 degrees range. So, right, it's hitting the outside the barrel. And the thing is that if it were to get super duper duper hot, then the steel would begin to spall. And so we don't want that. We want that barrel to last 100 years right there. So spalling isn't okay. Now, steel melts at 2,600 degrees, and we're not coming anywhere near that. But the spalling for steel, that's why you have a cast iron stove. Cast iron does not spall. And so you're just worried about the melting temperature, getting to like 2,600. You had a question?
Yes, how can you get that small amount of fuel up to 1,000 degrees? And how long does it take?
Well, so in a conventional wood stove, you get to 1,000 degrees easy peasy, right?
I had a cast iron cook stove, and it was really hot at about 700. That was on the chimney.
Okay. A cook stove isn't going to have as big of a firebox as a conventional wood stove for heating your home. That'll have a much bigger firebox. But you're right. You're going to be getting 700, 800 degrees with a cook stove. A conventional wood cook stove. But then with your bigger wood stove for heating your home, you're probably going to be able to get to 900 to 1,100 degrees relatively easily. This is the part I'm trying to get you to agree with what I'm saying. Like, sounds plausible. Okay, go on. Now I'm going to put that in an insulated box. So I'm not going to let any of the heat out. Whereas the box that you're running it in, you're letting the heat out right away. The heat comes out immediately. That's all the heat you get. That's all of it.
It's your box. Is it as big as a conventional wood stove? So it's big, fairly big.
And you got a whole bunch of big blocks of wood in there and stuff. Okay, and if you put a bunch of small wood in there, maybe you'll get 1,200 degrees. And then it'll be so hot, you're gonna start to worry about your home burning down. So, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna insulate that. And then because we insulate it, we keep all the heat in, then it gets hotter. It's kind of like going outside on a cold day, buck naked, versus wearing a coat. We're going to keep the heat in, and we have measured, and I'm not sure if I have slides coming up or not, but we built a rocket kiln. And so we got to high fire, which is 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit with our kiln. So we've measured this stuff. over and over and over and over again. So we know what temperatures we're getting. We're not just guessing. Does this help answer your question? It's insulated. Okay. I'm going to go and read my damn slide. What am I talking about now? Wood box core. Oh, this one. This one's in our library. And it recently got overhauled, but still wood box core. So this part over here is a wood box with the core in it. And then there's a pipe going from that over to the mass, which is a pebble-style mass. We did a bunch of experiments with this, including external air intake. I don't like external air intake. And I think a lot of you who are familiar with Montana code or are familiar with a bunch of other things about external air intake with wood stoves are going to object and push. And I gotta say, I get to have my own personal preferences. And I can spend a half an hour talking about it, but I do have a video on YouTube explaining it, explaining why I don't like external air intake. We tried exhaust out the wall low, out the wall high, and through the roof. We did guillotines to plug where the exhaust would go outside, so that way it'd be an insulated plug so we could keep more heat in. And we also did a bypass, so that way when starting it or during different times, during different experiments, we can bypass the mass and have the exhaust go directly outside. We did oodles of experiments. And so I could easily fill an hour and a half talking about those experiments and the changes that we made to that system. But that's getting kind of advanced, and I think what I'd rather do is go on with the other rocket mass heaters that we have in this presentation.
I don't understand what an exhaust down go back to that previous.
She wants to ask me all the things. Exhaust low.
Actually, I want to ask you about the exhaust out the wall low, exhaust out the wall high. I agree with you.
Okay, so here's the rocket mass heater, all right? And option A, exhaust out the roof, right? That's, everybody kind of does that, right? Easy peasy. Or we can cork it right here and send the exhaust out the wall low.
Okay.
And then what comes out the wall looks like what's coming out of a dryer vent. Why would somebody want to do that? The other thing is that some people are perfectly comfortable putting a hole in the roof to do this, and other people feel like it's 10 times easier or better or whatever putting it out the wall. Then the next one is put it out the wall high. And so route it out the wall, but route it out here or go through the roof. So we did experimentation with that. We tried those different ways, and we tried a whole bunches of different variations on those different ways. In the end, for all the rocket mass heaters that we build from here on out, they all go through the roof.
So the other question is, it doesn't have smoke, or very little smoke. Is there other, I don't want to call it particulate, but the types of exhaust other than the carbon monoxide, whatever you were talking about?
Let's talk about carbon monoxide for just a moment. So in the next slide, Peter Vandenberg's batch box system. So Peter Vandenberg brought with him a testometer. And so this is something where there's a probe that you put into the exhaust path, and it measures 7 different kinds of gases, one of them being carbon monoxide. Now, if you go and you put this exact same testometer, which is done on natural gas heaters, then they never have zero, no matter what. They always have carbon monoxide. They're always putting carbon monoxide outside. But this rocket mass heater, and most of our rocket mass heaters that we've ever measured, for about 75 to 80% of the burn, carbon monoxide is at 0. There is 0 carbon monoxide going outside. Now there is carbon dioxide going outside. I don't think there's any, and there's steam. Are there other particulates and other gases? There has to be. I haven't been able to get them to show up on any of the things that we test. And frankly, the thing that's the most critically important test to me is the smoke. And so we're very, very psychotic about the smoke. Stephen, have you ever like looked at the, the one at the Fisher Price house? Like outside while it was being lit?
While it was being, I'm usually in the house.
Yeah, no. So no. So I know Ernie did it several times when we first built it, and he was saying you got smoke for 15 seconds. Now I think a lot of our rocket mass heaters are closer to like 30 to 45 seconds as they're getting started and they're getting up to temperature to start burning all the smoke. And it does take them a little while to get there. So there is smoke at the very beginning.
So basically no smoke. But my question was, is there other?
I look forward to reading your white paper on the topic. I'm curious.
Well, I'm not going to write a white paper. Is there a yes or no? You know,
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, we saw the woman basically breathing it in, and she said she could smell smoke smell, but there was no smoke. But the exhaust temperature at that point, I think, was about 70. You know, proving it's a pretty efficient system, but I would not put my face in and try and, I think the woman might have been drunk. I don't know. But I've seen people do that several times where they just need to know what it smells like, because that's a way to detect if there's any other particulate. I'm sure there is other particulate, you know. I just don't know what. I do know that we're burning far, far cleaner than anything else I've ever seen. We're burning, generally, for most of the burning far cleaner than natural gas. Far, far cleaner than natural gas. You had a question?
Yeah, I just wondered if, following up on that, and thinking about the air quality,
Yeah.
and they are really, a lot of people are really interested in PM2.5 and stuff. You wouldn't see, nor would you smell it. And they have those purple air people are using, so like for $150 or something, you can buy one, and it might be part of the story of, making a case for these if you can show that there wasn't PM2.5, because otherwise you don't know what's going to.
Okay. So like PM 2.5 is going to be like the smallest particle size for smoke. And there's other particulate as well.
It's measuring 2.5 and everything's smaller, so it's all like, 100th of a hair. It's all really, really tiny.
Right. It's tiny stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things that triggers those is going to be vehicle exhaust, right? I mean, it's not just particulate from smoke like from somebody running a wood stove.
Right, but you can use them inside homes and you can test whether, you put them on and you can see what's coming out your natural gas stove, your methane gas stove. People have used them for wood stoves and found out what happens for them. It might be a neat test to show how here's our minds.
We do have 2 different test meters that we bandy about, and it does seem like our PM 2.5 is always very low. But I haven't looked at it recently, and I know we haven't tested every rocket mass heater that we have. I don't know, if one of the people at our place wants to do it, we could do that and see, both inside and outside. Yeah. Dr. Watson?
Are you going to talk about the Liberator model and its
Yes.
EPA certification?
Yes, I am. So an EPA certified, UL listed rocket mass heater coming soon to these very slides. All right. Peter Vandenberg, he's from the Netherlands. He's still perfecting the English language. And this is his experiment from several years ago. This is the first time he ever built an 8-inch batch box rocket mass heater. This was shortly on the tail of him experimenting at his place with 4-inch and 6-inch systems just before coming out and building this 8-inch batch box, which turned out to be a great success. And now whenever anybody wants to build a rocket mass heater, they always want to build a batch box, and I have to try to talk them out of it. So it's got lots and lots of awesome advantages. And the greatest success that people have is with the J-tubes, like the previous 2 rocket mass heaters that we just saw. Most people who build a batch box, they screw it up. And so it doesn't go the way that they hope. But it's got this pebble-style mass, which we barely use. The key of this system is that it uses this triple barrel design because it's inside of our classroom, which when we're not having class, we put all the chairs and tables away and we use it like a shop. And we build things in there and stuff like that. So the function of the triple barrel design is to heat the space up fast. And so to put hardly any heat into the mass at all. So a batch box with a triple barrel is a pretty common design for a wood shop. Stephen?
One thing I would like to say about the batch box is that if it's almost like it's designed as baby's first rocket mass heater, because it's very similar, you treat it very similar to a conventional fireplace in a home. That's what it seems.
I think it's the opposite. I think it's the opposite. So I think that Gilligan's will run this the wrong way because it's not. And like you got to have an inch of space behind the wood and an inch over the wood and an inch of space in front of the wood. And if you don't do that, it won't work correctly.
My point in saying that is that, you know, whenever you light the fire in it, once it gets started, you throw a lot of wood in there at once to make that pile of wood, and that's what makes me think of an old school fireplace.
I think that it performs well when you have mastered how it works, because how it works is not all that complicated, but most people don't want to read the fucking manual, so they just start pitching shit in there and it plugs up the port in the back and they're like, oh, why is smoke coming out the front? Well, you plugged the way for it to get out. And so I think it's not very Gilligan resistant, whereas the one, the Fisher-Price house, I think is the most Gilligan resistant. So whenever it's somebody's first time, I think the Fisher-Price house is the best place to start. The Liberator. All right, so this over here is a commercial rocket mass heater. I believe they build it in Missouri. I don't remember the name of the website. It might be like rocketheaters.com or something. I'm not sure. But if you search for Liberator rocket mass heater or Liberator rocket heater, this will come up. And it is built like a tank. And we've had the inventor out to our place several times as one of the world's innovators in rocket mass heater technology. And in fact, we've got a movie that we just released a couple months ago called Free Heat. And he's in there, and we're running the testometer, and we're talking about how to get this, 97% efficiency with our burns and things of that nature. And we talk about the Liberator, his rocket heater. Now, it is a 4-inch system. It is made dominantly out of metal because that's what the government requires. It's way, way, way overbuilt. There's a bunch of metal in this that it doesn't need, that's there because other wood stoves need that metal there. And it's like, but you got all this insulation right there. You don't need that metal. This could be, and he's like, I know, it could be like 1/3 the weight, but we have to use this gauge of steel right here in order to get the UL listing. And so it's built like a tank. But I would say it's good for a home. It does come with a pellet hopper. And I would think that that's the best way to use it is with pellets. I don't particularly care for it when using it with sticks that much, but it's kind of designed where the pellets are the primary thing and sticks in a pinch. I find that when I go outside, I have a hard time finding the pellets, but I can find the sticks easy. So I guess we each have our own style about how we go about this. We found that it worked exactly as described, and it did a very nice job. We did end up taking it out of the wood shop, and we put a 7-inch batch box in there. I'm not sure if we have a picture of that, but the Liberator I think would be very good for a home, and we were trying to use it in our wood shop. And with our wood shop, it'll be like no one's been in there for 3 or 4 days, so it's stone cold. And then we go to light it, and it's like we need it to get up to temperature quickly, and the Liberator's just got a 4-inch wood feed. And it's more designed to keep a home warm than to heat a wood shop space up, an outdoor space up fast. It's for maintaining heat, not for a big leap in heat. And it replaced this cottage rocket prototype. This is one of Chris McClellan's earliest cottage rockets. And I think we're going to see more about that because that got moved to the Dog Star, but we have another one inside the sauna, and we can talk about that in a little bit. All right, the Red Cabin. The Red Cabin is where everybody wants to do their experiments because it's kind of centrally located at base camp. So the first thing is Peter Vandenberg built this experiment, the Minnie Mouse prototype. He called it Minnie Mouse. We'll see more about that in a little bit. Then Kirk Mobert built this, a really beautiful rocket mass heater. This is a batch box, a 4-inch batch box rocket mass heater with no barrel, no radiator surface at all. And so we did a bunch of modifications to it to try to save it, but in the end we decided to take it out. And so it's not there anymore. But the problem that we had is that since it had no radiator and it was all mass, is that it would take hours to heat this tiny space up. We would run this fire for hours, and it's finally like, okay, it's 70 degrees, and I've been running this fire for hours. I'm going to go to bed. I'm sick of fucking with this thing. So then you go to bed, and then an hour and a half later, you're up again because it's 100 degrees inside. You got to open a window. So you heated the mass. The fire went out. The fire is out. But now the mass is like giving you all that heat back. And so it's continuing to heat the space to where it's too hot. So a little bit of a radiator surface would be really good with this design. Then we tried a 4-inch J-tube. And the big thing is like with a J-tube, you've got your wood feed here, and then every time you go to start the fire, you're supposed to I usually take a little piece of cardboard, put it down there and grab the ash and put it in the ash bucket before starting the fire. But with a 4-inch, I can't get my giant hand down the hole to do that. And people who can get their smaller hand down the hole, then they pull it back out and it's all blackened from being such a small hole that had burning things in it earlier. So there's that. Plus, you just can't get it hot enough. We struggle to get them to burn clean enough by our standards. So we're not going to do 4-inch anymore. We did move in this one. This is the equivalent to the Liberator, but this is what they have in Europe. So it's made in Bulgaria. We are loved, and so they sent it to us for free to experiment with. And so we put it in here to try it out. Similar thing to the Liberator. So like this is a cabin, and the cabin will sit empty for a week, and then we'll go in, somebody's coming. Helen Attow came. Who knows who Helen Attow is? You know, okay. So, and it's like, okay, well, now we got to go and run a fire. And since it's just a teeny tiny little system, it doesn't heat the space up fast. You got to burn a fire for an incredibly long time to warm the space up. Because a rocket mass heater is designed to keep a space warm, not, or at least these designs are. So it wasn't really meeting our needs. So we pulled it out and we put in, oh, there, we got a picture of it. And so Stephen's intimately familiar with this. In fact, this is one of the earlier ones. We've modified this one a bit since. But Helen came and stayed in there, and now she says that she wants a rocket mass heater. And by the way, Helen's moving back to the Bitterroot. She's already bought a place, and she'll be moving in slowly over the summer. So, but now she wants a rocket mass heater down there. All right, here's where Minnie Mouse ended up, in the Love Shack. An even smaller structure. We've made a bunch of modifications, but it's a 4-inch system. And the mass is located mostly inside the barrel. So wood feed, burn tunnel, risers inside this barrel. The exhaust gases come down the side and are picked up down here. And this goes inside the barrel, gets heated up, and the exhaust gases are pulled from the bottom of this barrel. But the brick is around the back of the barrel, and it's all been cut, so it's a very nice, tight fit back there. And that makes it so that way it acts as a heat shield, so the wood behind it doesn't get too hot, and it's the mass. So we've been experimenting with increasing the mass inside of there with that. We're going to try and see if we can get it to work before we end up taking it out. I think we'll probably end up taking it out, but I'd like to complete all the possible experiments we can with that before we take it out. Oh, good, we got a picture of this. So here's what's in the wood shop now. We saw those wood shop pictures earlier. This is not yet done because you can see how this is, and this is a good example of cob. So you were asking about cement, and we tend to use cob, or also known as adobe. And so this kind of a mud, we do a rough texture because there's more layers coming later, and we'll finish building this. But we've already fired this up a bunch of times. How quickly do you suppose it heats up the wood shop?
The wood shop this time of year, it heats up in an hour.
Okay. So, and it's using a triple barrel design, and that's a 7-inch batch box. And it's using this new plunge door design, which I really kind of like. I think it's working out well. The other batch box we have has the exoskeleton, which is a lot of welding work to put together. Too many people try to build a batch box and put a door that's masonry mounted, and that's just a terrible idea. That always fails. We have an uninsulated teepee. So this was one of the very first rocket mass heaters we built, and there was a couple staying in the teepee, and that winter, this was 9 years ago, that winter, it got to 26 below at the teepee. And on that particular night, that particular morning, when the couple got up, so the fire went out at like 9 o'clock, and they went to bed. And when they got up in the morning, they took off their night clothes, and they put on their day clothes. And when they went outside is when they realized how bitter cold it was outside. So the big question was, when you changed, how cold did it feel? Doesn't matter what a thermometer says, because that's only measuring the convective temperature. How cold did it feel? And they said it felt like it was 50 or 55 degrees inside. So the mass in this bench had been heated the night before to who knows what temperature, and it's radiating out heat the next morning. A rocket mass heater works in a very different way. So they felt like it was 50 or 55 degrees inside, even though it was 26 below outside. This is our 8-inch Cobb style rocket mass heater at Cooper Cabin. This is the build that's inside of Ernie and Erica's book, Building the Rocket Mass Heater Builder's Guide. And so when we built this, because most of the time people build with cob, you can shape it into anything, so they shape it into dragons and frogs and turtles and things like that. And so when this is being built, I said, I want the world's most boring rocket mass heater, because too many people are like, I can't build a rocket mass heater because I don't know how to carve a dragon. There were all kinds of things that were holding them up, and it's like, I want the world's most boring rocket mass heater. So this is very boring, very plain, and it's very effective. The building is only 40% complete. It's still not insulated, and we have people living in there now, and I believe that they heat this structure 900 square feet with about 3 cords of wood every winter, and they can keep it, quite comfortable. The first people to live in there kept it at about 80 to 85 all winter, which I think is just nuts. But some people like to live that way.
Question. I heard it say right now, there's a guy in Sonoma County, California, who builds just like that with cob, really overly elaborate, makes rockets.
Dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, we actually prefer.
So I would have to say that of all of the rocket mass heater builders I know, at least a dozen do something artistic. Something, like they can't build it without adding flair.
Like jets.
Oh, there's gems, there's stones, but then there's like making it look like a dragon or some sort of animal, and we'll see a lot of those, but none of them at my place. We tend to be pretty boring. But in the videos earlier, didn't everybody see the stuff that was rather beautiful? And this is an older slide deck, really. There's some extremely beautiful stuff that's come out just in the last couple of years. And I don't have those in my videos or in my slides. So it's well worth looking at. This is a tiny space, and it's a 6-inch Cobb style rocket mass heater. This was built a little over a year ago, and we got all the video of it being built. It was a weird space to put a rocket mass heater, and so it's a weird shape. The ducting on the inside is weird. Everything about it was weird, and it looks weird now, but it works. It gets the job done. This one's also in that movie. This is an 8-inch pebble style. This is a very basic, very simple rocket mass heater. And we built this. We had this garage, and we were like adding on this little bump out, and we're calling it the solarium. And it still isn't quite done. But we're working on finishing it. But this was built over a year ago. And Stephen, you've stayed in there a couple of nights. Oh, you're staying there now? Okay. And warm enough for you? Yeah, yeah. I think it's a pretty nice little system. The season extender, so this is built for greenhouses. And if you have a rocket mass heater in a greenhouse, it needs to be water resistant. So, because a greenhouse is a very humid place, plus the mass is generally one of the growing beds, so it's going to be watered. And you're going to be pouring water on it. So we built this one outdoors so that Chris McClellan could demonstrate his techniques for building greenhouse-style rocket mass heaters. So you can fire this up, and you can extend the growing season on that hugelkultur bed, which in this picture it still isn't quite done. The bun warmer. This started with a weird thing. Ernie Wisner felt like there wasn't enough Cobb-style rocket mass heaters down at base camp, and there had to be one. So he just started building this. And then Chris McClellan was there, and he said, well, how about if we take a bunch of barrels and we weld them together in a big kind of horseshoe shape, and then everybody could kind of sit on the barrels, get their butts warmed, and be facing each other. And then in time, we did this thing where we would do that, and it's still, I think it looks pretty ugly, but it's getting more handsome with every passing year as we do more and more to it. But the idea is you sit on it, and it warms your butt as it's running, and then we put one of these things in the middle so we can roast our marshmallows while we're out there at night. We've had a couple of nice little over-the-fire cookouts there. Oh, we got the picture for the cottage rocket. Okay. So this is up at the little cabin we have called the Amazing Dog Star. And we've got this, this used to be in our wood shop, and we took it out. And this little building that it's in, it heats it up really fast. But then the problem is in the morning it'll be really cold. It doesn't have enough mass inside of it. So after hours and hours and hours of Chris McClellan and I debating over this, we decided that we want to do some experimenting, and we're gonna make this a little lower and a little wider so it accepts pizzas better. And but this mass is very thick on top. The radiant heat coming off the top of the barrel will hit this surface, and then conductive heat will pass the heat through the mass, and we're hoping that you can go to bed at 75 and wake up with something like 67, 68. Whereas right now, it's unacceptably cold in the morning. And we're going to fix that one way or another. This is a retired rocket mass heater. It was actually a smoker. It had a couple of fascinating things with this build. You could kind of see this little bit of metal here. So if you took this whole thing off, you could put 3 rocks there, and you could open and close a hole on the top of the barrel, just enough to get that clean gas heat, that heat that's coming right off of the riser to, like, fry your eggs or whatever. And I think that's in one of our movies that we have about rocket mass heaters. it was a fascinating thing. Yes?
So if you build the mass above the chamber, the heat will automatically rise and it gets passively heated. Some of the other designs have a lot of space going out away from the firebox. Do you have to run pipes through that mass in order for it to absorb the heat?
That is a really good question. Traditionally, with the older rocket mass heaters, and still to this day, it's kind of a preferred design, is that you're going to have a duct go through the mass and then come back, and then usually you hit the vertical exhaust next to the barrel. That's kind of our most conventional, normal, tried and true design. Today, we're doing a lot of experimenting with what we call a stratification chamber. So there'll be a big opening, and one of the ways that we do it is we'll take a bunch of barrels and weld them together, and so there'll be this big chamber in there. And then we'll route the heat in there, and then we'll extract heat from the bottom. Because like a hot air balloon, the hot gases rise up. And so the hottest stuff is at the top. So we're going to take the coolest gases from the bottom. But in order for this to work, there has to be a big enough chamber so that the gases can stratify. So there's this alternative, which we talked about, I'm going to say 8 years ago, and we did some implementations 6 or 7 years ago, and we're still dabbling. It is proving to be good, but it's bulky. And so for most homes, it's probably too bulky in order to get that stratification to work. So we're experimenting. Now on this one, this is a brand new experiment because of course you've got your barrel and then it's going to be very hot on the top of the barrel and it's going to shoot out a bunch of radiant heat. There's 3 types of heat: convective heat, radiant heat, and conductive heat. And the way we heat our homes is usually with convective heat, which is the least efficient. Now, radiant heat is going to just go up there and heat the ceiling, and nobody's sitting up on the ceiling. And so what a waste. Chris and I made this up about a year ago. And now Stephen and the boot camp team built this, like, I don't know, a few weeks ago. And so it's like, we'll see how it goes. So this is experimental. But my place, where we live, is called Wheaton Labs. Kind of a making fun of or tip of the hat to Bill Nye the Science Guy, Nye Laboratories, which I used to work at. Sort of, kind of, a little bit. That's a long story, different thing. The key is that we do a lot of experimenting. So here's one of our experiments. And in order to be able to answer the question that you're asking by looking at this, I have to complete the experiment still. We're still trying it out. But I do have high hopes for that. The Ring of Fire, we retired it. The sand, while it worked really well, and you get sandy butt every time you sat down, the sand eventually worked its way into the ducting underneath, and then gases wouldn't go through it, so it stopped working. This is an example of, this is inside of our little cabin called Allerton Abbey. And the guy that built this, he took 6 weeks to build this. It was just nuts. And he put every whiz-bang thing he'd ever read. And I kept saying, please stop doing that. And this was the first time he's ever built a rocket mass heater. And of course, it didn't work. So it's a great reason to keep it simple the first time you build it. I mean, build a couple of nice simple ones before you try to experiment or try to do all the wackadoodle things that the experts are doing. Here's Peter Vandenberg with his creation called the Fat Rabbit. I don't know why, but before we ever got a chance to fire it, was going to go in the solarium. And he emailed me and said, don't do it. I don't want you to fire it up. And no explanation, so we didn't. We took it apart. I don't even know where it is now. Oh, this is what we have inside of Allerton Abbey right now. And we call this the cast iron door. Obviously, it's a skillet, But the thing is that when you go to make that metal exoskeleton around a batch box rocket mass heater, that is an enormous endeavor. And it'll triple the build time of any rocket mass heater. So we were experimenting with different doors. We started off with what we called the casserole door, which was a lid for a casserole dish that goes into an oven, a glass lid, which is really nice because then you can see the fire. But those tended to explode. So, and then we got the Pyrex ones, those kind of yellow, orangey, amber glass. Those exploded too. And so now we go with the cast iron. Cast iron has never exploded. That one's been there for years now. It's still working great. But this is a cooktop. And this is using Peter Vandenberg's new double shoebox design. It's working great. This is using the Sidewinder batch box style. This is a cooktop over at Cooper Cabin. I think people don't like using it very much. I think they like using the one at Allerton Abbey much better. I think the reason why they don't like using this is because this cast iron top, it just takes forever to heat it up. I mean, once it's heated up, it's very even and nice, but it just takes a really long time and a lot of fire to heat it up. This is the new Lorena for our budding outdoor kitchen. The interesting thing here is that the wood feed is down very, very low, and then there's a riser that's buried in the ground. You have to feed the wood at ground level, and there's a riser that comes up here right underneath the pot. And so the flames hit the bottom of the pot, and the pot is recessed inside of that hole there. So when you're trying to boil water, you've got this giant amount of heat hitting the bottom, like probably about 5 times hotter than your stovetop can get. And it's heating from the sides as well. So it's heating the bottom. So we could boil 5 gallons of water in 15 minutes. And that's the other thing too, is that for most of our rocket stuff that we're doing, when it comes to, like we got a rocket oven we're gonna see in a moment, we can heat that up in like 1/3 of the time of a conventional oven, and we have designs to make that even shorter still. But after the heat leaves the pot, then it comes over to this other cooktop over here. It's just a glass cooktop taken from a dead electric cooktop. Water heaters. This is our pressurized water heater, which we're talking about replacing with an unpressurized system. We've got all kinds of safety checks all over it, but whenever you heat wood, whenever you heat water with wood, there's a danger. And so we call it boom squish. It is very dangerous, and we kind of want to discourage people from doing it. Instead, here's our rockety contraption for heating water. We use this for dishwashing. Yeah, and Steven's used it many times.
That's my favorite piece of technology that we have. And it is to me, it seems like a totally foolproof, non-exploding water heater that's powered by water. It's brilliant.
It's unpressurized. There's no way for it to explode. And I think it has a lot of really brilliant mechanisms in how it works. But I think the really beautiful thing is that you can get hot dishwater in about, I'm going to say 11 or 12 minutes. Does that sound about right?
If the tank was smaller, it would be quicker.
Well, it's 11 or 12 minutes until you got hot dishwater, but then there's enough left over for the next meal too, right? And so I think it's absolutely delightful. Here's our old rocket kiln, which did not work particularly good, and here's our new rocket kiln, which this was this last summer at the Permaculture Technology Jamboree, which we host once a year. And there's always been a problem with ceramics. They usually, in order to get this kind of ceramic thing that they seek with wood-burning ceramics, then it usually uses up half a cord or more of wood in one burn, and they really generally cannot get to a high fire. So here we used a handful of wood and we got to high fire. And so the gal whose butt we're looking at here, This is Dr. Orr, and she is an expert ceramicist, and so she took pictures and shared them across the world, and within hours, we were super famous in the ceramics world, because we have accomplished what no one's been able to accomplish for centuries. And so being able, so at the moment that we did this burn, every time you're going to bake ceramics, it's going to cost you $30 to $40, whether you're using natural gas or electric. Everybody's got their different way of doing it, but it's always $30 or $40 to put all your stuff in there and heat it up to these temperatures. And so here we just used a handful of wood. And so it's like, what, is that 15 cents worth of wood that you just found lying around on the ground? So, but this is the kind of stuff that we do all the time, that we're constantly doing. We're constantly innovating. And a lot of it's very low tech. I mean, I kind of feel like what we've got here, in this particular case, you got the wood feed, and then you've got the burn tunnel, and then the riser. And then this is a broken down kiln that we just kind of stuck in the riser tube. And we've got another design here where we're doing a different riser, and then we've got this insulated box above it. Oh, and here's the cones. These cones, these are things that you put inside, and depending on how fallen over they are, tells you what the temperature was inside. And so that's how we verified that we were hitting temperatures of about 2,250 degrees.
How long did that take to get the temperature, to get the high fire temperature?
If I remember correctly, weird. I think it took less than half an hour.
So did you actually fire secondary fire like glazed pieces with too fast?
There were glazed pieces in there.
Did they make it?
I think, I'm not sure, let's see. No, it's not showing it here. We did a prototype a little over a year ago, and that's inside of the Free Heat movie. There's showing the prototype and the ceramics with the glazes, and the different kinds of glazes, and the effect that they want from those glazes. But that was with a prototype that we made then, and this is like the final product. But yeah, we did hit 2250, and so as my understanding is that that's high fire.
Yeah, I'm just curious about the ceramics surviving getting that hot that fast. The advantage of a slow fire is it can accommodate more in a clay body. So I don't know anything about.
Well, after they get to temperature, they cork it, and then it cools off slowly, because you want it to anneal. And so they kind of, in the movie that we have, they do a showing of all of their glazed pieces that they pulled out. And
What's that one called?
Free Heat. Yeah, I think it's freeheat.info. We've got several of these J-tube engines that we use, and we're replacing them with larger J-tube engines. And we use them like rocket stoves here and there, or whenever we're doing an experiment, we might plug one of these in really quick. I don't really like these little J-tube engines that we have because I think that the wood feed is too short. You have to use this short wood in order to use it properly. And they're all 6-inch J-tubes, which I think is kind of small. And it seems like we have all these experiments we want to do, so we have been building some bigger J-tubes. Oh, the rocket oven. We have a whole movie on building this rocket oven, and actually we built 4. But this is where I think a conventional fancy pants oven will get to 350 degrees in 13 minutes. And this one we got to 7.5 minutes. We got to 350 in 7.5 minutes. And, but we have a bunch of stuff about how we believe we can get that down to 1 minute. The other thing is that your oven at your home is not allowed to get hotter than 550 degrees. And, but there are a lot of people who make pizza, and the pizza that they want it to be baked at 900. There's a different kind of pizza that's made at 900 degrees. And so this will do 900. Easy peasy. Oh, this is cool. This is getting used a lot. I noticed somebody's got something that looks like an electric dehydrator on the kitchen table right now. And I'm kind of thinking like, why don't they just go down and use this thing? There must be a reason. But, so we've got this solar food dehydrator with a rocket assist. And so basically, it's got two cabinets. That picture is terrible. That picture is pretty useless. Well, here's the two. So it's got two cabinets. This one cabinet where all the food goes, and then this second cabinet where there's a rocket mass heater in it. And that's also the one with all the glass on it. I wonder if there's a better picture. No, that's it. Damn it. But this is in the free heat movie also. There it is, freeheat.info, right down here. So, but the idea is it's got a glass front, so when the sun is out, then it heats the rocks inside, and then the air moves through the system and it dehydrates the food. And then, but the thing is, that the problem with the solar food dehydrators is that your food bounty tends to come in the fall. It tends to come like September. And it's kind of like, well, by then you have less sun and the days are cooler. So now you harvest as much sun as you want. If it's not enough sun, if it's a cloudy day or if it's night, go ahead and light a quick fire. It'll heat the rocks up inside. There's a whole bunch of rocks in there. It'll heat all those rocks up and it'll keep the air moving all night long. Our rocket sauna, it's also using a cottage-style rocket, although I like the idea of putting an 8-inch triple barrel in there. I think that'd be nicer. The rocket hot tub, we almost finished it at the PTJ this last summer. We will definitely be finishing it this summer. So would love to see a bunch of you come out to the PTJ this summer. And we usually have about 15 different things that we build simultaneously. And then you can wander around to each of the builds and have a good time. You can either participate or just observe, whatever you want. And we do a full 10 days. Oh, right. This has been set up for you guys. Plans for this, the rocket mass heater in the solarium. If you want, you can take a picture of this, that URL, and you can get the plans for free. I think that they're beautiful plans. They're like 35 pages, I think, something like that. Very well done. So this is Andreas. I don't know why he put my name first. He did like 90% of the work. It should say, you know, Bernal Brothers and Paul, but yeah, okay. They're just kind to me. You got it? I want to go to the next slide. I think it comes up later on again. Oh, the Rocket Mass Heater Jamboree, we're going to have one in October this year. And the Permaculture Technology Jamboree, I think, is in July this year. And if you go to wheatonlabs.com/events, you can see that down in the corner there. That's how you get to find out about our events. Let's see. We have an 8-movie set. Everything in here is built in the Missoula area. I think the first 4 movies were a little bit east of here in 2012. We did a rocket mass heater event there and just did a ton of stuff. And then the next 4 movies are all at my place, and I think it's from like a dozen different builds, maybe like over 7 different events, took all this stuff. And then the new Free Heat movie builds all this stuff, and the Free Heat movie just came out a couple of months ago. And that's it. All right. Any questions? Did I cover it completely and thoroughly? Oh, has it got the link? Oh, there. Yeah, here's the goodie again. You can still take a picture of it. Any questions? No? Wow. I guess I was just that thorough. Yes. You have a million questions. I should get a chair.
So, I'm wondering a few things. The size of the heater as opposed to the size of space it's heating. I mean, is there equivalence in that? Or the size of, the amount of heat that it generates, can that be altered by putting a smaller amount of wood in? I mean, when you fire it, do you continue firing to a certain temperature, or can you stop that? It doesn't seem to take much wood to do that. I haven't seen any cob houses or straw bale homes. Which one of these has straw bale would be insane?
So some of the stuff that was on here was straw bale, but in our Wafati design. So it's like earthen and straw bale. I don't think any of those were cob, but cob doesn't do well in Montana. I mean, yeah, straw bale does great here. I think you lose a lot of your eco points when you get the straw to you, because usually you're not building like in the middle of a field where they're harvesting straw. Although the rocket mass heater, or the solar food dehydrator with rocket assist, we insulated that with slip straw. And the straw we used was knapweed. Yeah, right on. So, and it's working great. So, so our slip straw is made with knapweed. And it's like, well, we ought to do some more of that because there's quite a bit out there. People are like, hey, can you come take my knapweed right here? You don't have to travel 100 miles, go get a bale. No. We'll give you this stuff right here. All right, so that's what we did. We just took the stuff that was right there, knapweed, made it, used it as an insulative. Anyway, I don't know, did I answer your question? We got to talking about straw bale, cob.
That was more of an aside. It seemed to me like, it's the way the thermal mass of the straw bale works. These would be the perfect one. You could get more mileage out of these guys than in one of the wooden structures that I've seen that must not have the same capacity.
Well, we saw these things installed in 2 uninsulated structures. One of them was a teepee. I mean, that's pretty famously uninsulated. I mean, you know how uninsulated it is.
Easy, but if you're trying to get the most bang for the buck, you must get better, do better in the better insulated state.
So the Fisher-Price house is a double wide. The insulation on the walls is and we're just now putting insulation on the windows so we can actually, insulate the structure better. And we have some ideas about improving the rocket mass heater. We're talking about building an enclosed front porch. And so with this structure that is what it is, we got 0.60 cords of wood for 1 winter. And that's just from the 1 heater. And now we're talking about like, I think we might be able to cut that in half. I mean, 0.60 cords. So if you've got a box that's 4 feet, that's about 4 feet, 4 feet, and 4 feet, and it's heaping, that is 0.60 cords of wood. That is the amount of wood that you probably pull out of your yard that naturally fell off your trees during a couple of windstorms. And you just went and you were going to go throw it into that green container to have it taken and turned into what used to be called eco-compost. But now you can just kind of clip it up and put it in this box, I'm imagining. And then when winter rolls around, that's all you need to heat your home all winter long.
Well, the other question would be consistency of fire. Somebody's got to fire it up.
Oh, yeah.
It would be awesome to.
No, there's a lot to be said about the magic of the thermostat. Man, that thermostat is delightful. Of course, that thermostat is also kind of, and granted, there are going to be some people in this audience that think climate change stuff is a bunch of bullshit. And it's kind of like, but there's going to be a lot of people here that are going to think that it's very important. And so it's kind of like, if a person like that had a rocket mass heater and they had their thermostat, then it's possible that what they'll do is that they'll fire up their rocket mass heater a couple times a week just so that they know they're cutting back on their carbon footprint a couple times a week. Or they might try to, do it a little bit more often to decrease their carbon footprint more. And then when they don't feel like it, well then, the thermostat kicks in. Does that help paint a picture? I mean, the thermostat's a delightful thing, and then you're right. You got to pull those sticks out of your box and put them inside. Then the thermostat covers you. until you have a power outage. All right. You had 1 million questions. I'll take a couple more.
Well, that was my, I've seen each one of these is built in, looks like relatively small rooms, and they all seem to be of different size. And so that was what I was curious about, how big the space could you be?
Well, the one in the Fisher-Price house, the Fisher-Price house is 1,300 square feet. And when we fired up, if you're inside one of the bedrooms and you close the door, I'd say it's about 4 or 5 degrees cooler in there. And if you open the door, it's 3 degrees cooler in there. So now I've read on the internet, when I've described this, there was like out at Reddit, people were saying, everybody's gonna die. 3 degrees cooler, they'll die. And I'm thinking like, you know what? I have met people in San Diego. Those people would die. At 69 degrees for an indoor temperature, they're not gonna make it.
I have a friend in Seattle that keeps us at 58.
That is a place totally different than San Diego.
I go work on his house and he pumps it up to 60 for me.
So yeah, tropical at 60. So the thing is that I think that what we do is we generally get it up to about 75, and then we cork it.
Yeah, you don't have to heat it up until next morning.
And then the bedrooms are like at 72, and then in the morning it'll be, I don't know, 69 or 70, 69, and then in the bedrooms it'll be 67. And it's like, I don't know, I find that to be fine.
I think it's too warm for sleeping. I think it's totally unhealthy.
Right, and some people like to have a cooler room to sleep in. And so you probably keep the door closed, let it get a little cooler. Or maybe, whereas we're taking it up to 75, some people might take it up to 65 and think, that's plenty, that's plenty. I'd rather save the wood, you know, even smaller carbon footprint. All right, I'll take one more question. Who's got one? You had 1 million, but you've had your chance. Okay, the last question.
If you had to give an answer for a residential application of the optimal mass ratio to the size of the firebox, what would you say?
And we're talking about in a home. Because the answer is completely different in a cabin or in a wood shop or something like that. But in a home. So in a home, you can allow the system to be more efficient. You can.
You want to fire it once a day or something. Not every day.
I mean, I think that like what we have inside the Fisher-Price house is very optimal, but that's also pebble style. And pebble style is about 20% less efficient than cob. But some people say that they'll never have something made out of mud in their living room. And so then it's kind of like, okay, so maybe it has to be pebble style that we're talking about. These codes you're writing up in your head. And so I would have to say that if you've got a core, then I think your question is like, if you've got a core that's X, the mass is 3.5x.
Or you can couch. Yeah, or you can even use it on
Right, there's a beautiful.
the size of a microwave compared to the size of a couch or something.
There's a beautiful YouTube video of a guy in Scotland. And he says, I don't understand why people say that these things take up so much space, because right here we used to have a wood stove and a couch. And we took out the wood stove and the couch and replaced it with a rocket mass heater and a bench. And the bench, we shaped it like a couch. So now, before I had this couch, which was only 10 years old and it was beat to shit, and we had to get rid of it because it had become horribly ugly. And instead, we replaced it with this work of art couch, which will last 100 years. And so it'll never get beat up. And we put cushions on it to make it more couchy, and maybe we'll replace the cushions from time to time, but that's way easy compared to a whole new $1,500 couch. And so he was in Scotland, so he said like 1,000 pounds. So I'm guessing what the conversion is there. $1,200? So anyway, I think the amount of space it takes is 0 if you're going to compare it to a conventional wood stove and a couch. And but effectively, that's what you're going to do. It's going to be your core is going to take up about the same footprint as your wood stove, and your mass is going to have about the same footprint as your couch. Oh, thank you. And that was last. Thank you, everybody. It looks like all these other people ran away.